is the best time of year. And as I was saying, everybody says that this is the best time of the year, or I should say that quote is said often. But I'd like to think that March, as the spring is about to begin, and we're officially in the month of March, I think this time of year really competes for that. So having said that, we're here to talk all things March Madness. The big dance starts this Thursday. Technically, the first four starts today. And this is a special time of year for a reason. So let's get into the madness. Productive Conversations March Madness show. And who do I have with me today? Good friend of the show, Alex Ranniello, now transitioning from the NBA to the NFL and now men's college basketball. Great to have you once again, Alex.
Great to be back, fam. Happy to talk some March Madness.
Absolutely. And now we have a new kid on the block for the first time making his debut on this show with the suggestion of Alex. And I'm very, very excited to have him on the show. I feel a great vibe already. And I heard he knows a thing or two regarding the men's college basketball game. For the first time ever, Brandon Gutierrez comes on the show. Brandon, what's going on?
Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm super excited. Love college basketball. It's my life.
Oh.
The guru.
Yeah. The guru of college basketball.
The guru of college basketball, Brandon. It's so good to see you. So just quick things as a first timer here. How have you been? How'd you get into college basketball? What brings you here for it?
Let's see. I got into college basketball, I would say maybe 5-6 years ago, maybe longer than that now. We'll say at the golden age of UConn basketball when Coach Calhoun was the men's basketball team and they went on some of the greatest victories of all time. And we talk about them till today, with the, Kemba Walker, Boatwright, just so many great people playing for that team. It sparked my love for UConn, and then that just pretty much expanded to the whole entire NCAA Division I basketball college. And since then, it's been a yearly thing where I just keep up with it, and I just love watching. Just become an avid fan, seeing the young talent before they reach the NBA, and become all-stars if they do.
All right. Love that story. And Alex, I assume the same thing for you, as you have a hand in a lot of things. College basketball on top of it. Is it the similar story, just loving UConn and, seeing players develop until they make it into the show of the NBA?
Yeah, man. Pretty much kind of the same story as Brandon kind of did, like the chapter 1 version, starting back, 2004, 1999, 2001, those great teams with Mecca Okafor and Ben Gordon, Charlie V, all the way up to Rudy Gay. And then you have that little dry spell in between in the middle 2000s. And then they kind of return to glory back, like what Brandon's saying, when with Kemba and Shabazz and Boatwright, all those great teams culminating towards the end with Kevin Ollie on it before his way out. So yeah, they're back in business. They're looking hot again, and coming back to the Big East is definitely a huge catalyst for the recruiting classes. So we're going to be up there in the top 25 for years to come, all things considered. So I'm real happy. I'm really excited to be back in the college basketball and watching it more regularly, and I'm excited.
Excellent stuff. Great stories from the both of you. So I think this tournament in particular is a really special one, as it is the first tournament where things feel relatively normal in this pandemic world. Obviously, 2020, they outright canceled the tournament. 2021, we did have a tournament, but still people were just getting the vaccine at the time. I don't even think that there was full crowds. I mean, there were some, but not full crowds in the 2021 tournament. But that brings us here, March 22. I think it's a good 2 years since all the insane madness that took place with this pandemic and everything. And it's nice for once, as COVID, I'd like to think, is on its way out, or at least in a more controlled state. And now we can go back to our normal lives. And I think the March Madness tournament is a good way to start that. So the way this show is going to unfold. Now, I do trust our abilities of our guys here to break down all 68 schools, but that would be very long. And it would be a bore at
All-nighter.
some point. But again, I figured we're fans. We know what we're talking about. I think the best way to do this kind of show is to present our brackets, talk about our Final Four in particular, and talk about how our teams got there. So I think if you guys are down with that, why don't we get into it right here, right now?
Sounds good.
We'll start with the West region.
Okay.
So basically, tell me where you have teams like Gonzaga and UConn and Arkansas, Alabama, Texas Tech, Michigan State. Tell me who from this region is in the Final Four. I'll start with Brandon here to show that talent he has of analyzing college basketball. Then we'll go with Alex and me. And in this region, if you have any upsets to mention as well, we'd love to hear it. So tell me about the West region first, and where do you think who do you think will be representing the West region in the Final Four?
I definitely, in a picture perfect world, as a UConn fan, I would say UConn will go. But UConn at this point in time still has some things they need to work on, and with the road they have coming, I definitely think Gonzaga is going to take the West. I think it's one of the stronger sides of the bracket. There's just a lot of teams that have been doing well in the last month and a half,
right?
Or even in the last, the tournaments like the Big East, or even, the Big Ten. Like the SEC. There's just so many teams that did well in the tournament that can make a great upset going into it. I think like teams like Arkansas is like a throw in the air. Arkansas is a really good team, has great offense, even better defense. And, that's like a big team to look out for. Texas Tech in the last month have been showing like great success. They played okay in the tournament. They're coming in with the third seed. I think there's a big upset that, depending if they play Duke and how Duke comes to the table. Duke in the last few games have been looking great. The last game of the season, the regular season, or the conference season, they went out in a loss. They came back into the tournament, played well in the first round, I'm pretty sure, and then they ended up losing out in the semifinals. So I think there's a lot of questions with consistency. It's a younger roster. Can they handle the pressure of playing against like big teams like Texas Tech or even Michigan State, which they, it's definitely an option in the second round that they have to beat.
Excellent insight right there. I do agree, especially as one of the stronger regions, if not the strongest. Alex, do you feel the same way? And who is making a deep run from this side of the bracket?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think this is definitely the heaviest side of the bracket of the four quadrants. I think I had Gonzaga and Duke, in the Elite Eight leading up to the Final Four, but I actually had Duke prevailing. I just think it's one of those, magical years. Coach K's on his way out. Those kids are going to play as hard as they possibly can for him. I think Zaga is probably the preemptive favorite, but the game I saw against St. Mary's, even the game against University of San Francisco, there's definitely some weaknesses in their armor. So I could see them having a tough time, especially if Holmgren gets in foul trouble early, or they start doubling Drew Timme on the block, forcing turnovers. I don't think that front court for Gonzaga is nearly as strong as Duke or even UConn for that matter. UConn's very long on the perimeter, so I think that they could cause problems. And in the end, I just think that this comes down to the will of the players in the tournament, how well, how strong, and how hard they can play for their coaches. And I like Duke's chances against Gonzaga in the Elite Eight.
Okay. Another great insight from the great Alex Ranniello. And here's where I see things going. I do see Gonzaga being the team that makes it all the way to the Final Four. And simply, which I think historically, especially this era, Gonzaga's had a hard time. I think it's their year. Now, they only went 5-3 against ranked opponents, but obviously things change when this tournament. That's what's so great about it. And for a team that's incredible shooting and rebounding and a good defensive team, I think they could pull it off. And probably my big upset from this side of the bracket, I have Duke getting knocked out in the round of 32. I think Davidson specifically are going to end it simply because this Duke team has not won the big game. They could not finish out in the ACC. Obviously, losing Coach K's final game in his home court is bad. I don't see this team. I think this team is sadly going to end tragically for Coach K's career. And that's where I see it pulled off. And I also want to say, I think Davidson can actually beat Michigan State as well and have a run to the Sweet 16, and then they'll fall against Texas Tech. Michigan State has lost some terrible games in the recent tournaments with Tom Izzo, and sometimes he even calls him to hit his own players and get mad. But that's where I see things fall in there. I do have support for our UConn Huskies making it to the Sweet 16. Even look promising, even though they had a tough out in the Big East. They were looking really good in that tournament throughout. But I see Gonzaga being the one who holds it down once and for all. And also Texas Tech will be a big factor here. I picked them going as far as the Elite Eight. So let's go down a bunch to the Eastern region, where you have teams like Purdue and UCLA, North Carolina, reigning champs and Baylor's there. Marquette. Brandon, I'm going to toss it over to you again. What do you like about the West region, and who do you think will represent them in the Final Four?
Definitely going Kentucky. I think Kentucky came into the tournament with the second second seed. I think Baylor got lucky. I think Baylor towards the end of the year is starting to look a little bit shaky. I think we have to look out for Baylor in the news with one of their star players. Not remembering his name off the top of my head, but he is supposedly injured and doesn't look to be playing in the tournament. So, that's big things. Are they going to, they're coming into it, and then in the top, I think round 32, they have a chance of going against North Carolina, which is, a team that's established themselves to be one of the bigger teams in the March Madness and always usually makes it not, pretty far. So, there's a lot of scary things. You also have UCLA that they have the chance to go up against, and I'm really excited to see that UCLA team play. I think they played amazing in the last month. I think that they can definitely upset a lot of teams. They have a chance to make it to the Elite Eight, but it really depends on how Baylor can play and if they can, pull out some big wins. Another thing is, I think Kentucky, they just have a great roster. They are like leading right now in offensive rebounds. So like they can get the ball. They have a big team, great guards on that team. So I think towards the bottom of the bracket, they have the easier road. I think they have some fight with Murray State, but in the end, I think they'll take it. And I don't think Purdue has shown anything amazing or crazy to tell me that they're going to make it to the Elite Eight. So I definitely think Kentucky is going to come up big and make it all the way to the Final Four.
I feel the same way, Brandon. I think Kentucky, this is another really good Tar Heel team that also is incredible on the defensive side of the ball. Playing defense. And especially they're really good at secondary points. You mentioned in the offensive rebounds, and that's key. Also a very good free throw team. Usually the school that can make their free throws historically are the ones that usually make deep runs. And for a team that averages 73% as an entire team, that's something very promising for the Tar Heels. And I also see UCLA making a deep run going for as far as the Elite Eight. Looked incredible in the Pac-12 tournament. I like the combo with Juzanga and Jaquez coming in. I think they can be pros at it. And UCLA, for a team that had a heartbreaking loss in the Final Four last year, can maybe make themselves they might have an incredible comeback story after the fact. So we're both for the Tar Heels in this region, Alex. Are you the same way, or you have another idea?
Well, I see this as the most straightforward, predictable part of the bracket. The only upset I have in the first round is actually I got Marquette over North Carolina.
That's a key match.
Yeah, I think that's just a kind of an ugly matchup for both. I think it's going to be kind of grueling. And then you got a new head coach in there replacing Roy Williams. I think you're going to have a little bit of cold shakiness going into the tournament for the first time. I actually have I have Texas and Baylor in the Elite Eight on this part of the bracket, and I got Baylor prevailing just slightly. I know they got their issues, and that'll be another discussion on God, what is his name? I'm blanking too, but I think it's the rook. It's the
talk about the center. It's a really hard name to pronounce. Jonathan Tichwama Tichecho. I'm so sorry if I definitely botched that, but we'll go with Jonathan. Jonathan the center.
Big Johnny. No, I mean he's definitely an enforcer, but I've watched the games during the Big 12 and the game against Kansas. He's an enforcer, but he's not going to stagnate the offense in his loss in the roster for the tournament. I like UCLA. I think there's a tough matchup with St. Mary's in the round of 32. So that's going to be an issue. We saw how tough St. Mary's played Gonzaga in those two games this year. And I don't know. I like Texas's momentum. I like their new coach coming over from Texas Tech. I think he's got a lot of guts. Really, players play for him really strong. I have actually Murray State beating Kentucky in the second round. I think Kentucky is. I don't deny any of what you guys made. You made very great, valid points. I think Murray State's just hot. I think they're underrated when teams kind of get disrespected that have big win columns in the regular season. And I think they're coming out hungry. And I think that them against Texas will probably be the stronger part of this part of the bracket in the East. So I got Texas and Baylor in the Elite Eight, and I got Baylor just winning slightly out.
Yeah, I wonder if Murray State can make some better claims. That's the school of John Morant, right?
Yes.
And yes.
And they're on a 20-game winning streak, as you said. So maybe if they keep this up, they could get into a better conference.
And you got to remember.
Go ahead.
Oh, go. My bad.
No, I was just going to say that's like the biggest question we come into the March Madness is definitely the conference, but they're playing, I think it's the Ohio Valley Conference. There's no really huge competition there, so it'd be hard to match Murray State up against some of the bigger teams in the bigger conferences like the Pac-12, the SEC, the Big East. Some of those, coming out with those grueling conferences, we don't know how they're going to match up against a team like that. So,
does that bring any concern, Alex?
Yeah, I was just going to say, the one thing that really is like a shining beacon that's always tried and true in the tournament is great backcourt guard play, savvy guard play in the tournament. And I think that Murray State not only has it, and KJ Williams is just a monster, 18-8 on the year. Like he's going to be a reliable guy going forward in the tournament. I just think that when schools they have a chip on their shoulder more when they get either disrespected or disregarded by the press. And I think that Murray State's going to have a little bit of that, especially teeing off against Kentucky. And you got to remember, too, that Calipari's had a lot of issues in the tournament in recent years as well.
Mm-hmm. All right. Valid points across the board there. So going to the South Conference with teams like Arizona and Seton Hall, Houston, Illinois, Michigan, Tennessee, and Ohio State, Loyola Chicago, for instance, to name some of the few. Yes. So with this, I'll start with this. I'm a big fan of Arizona, a young, big team, huge on the boards. They won their conference in the Pac-12. People worry about their experience, but I see a team that has so much potential. Brandon, you're showing some emotion for those watching the video aspect. What do you say? Are you also with me on this?
I'm a huge Arizona fan this year. They have played outstanding basketball. They have not once yet to not shock me. They played great in their conference. They played great in the tournament, and I I don't see a team that has been as consistent as them this year, other than like, you could say maybe like a Gonzaga, but Arizona just looks like they know what they need to do. I think they're going to come into the tournament and just, have a breeze getting all the way to the Final Four.
All right. Now, Alex, do you believe in the Wildcats as well, or where do you see your South region going?
Yeah, so in the South region, I completely agree with you guys. I think they're the best team all year, even better than Gonzaga, just because they can win a multitude of ways. They have a strong backcourt. They have dominant presence inside. They've been staggering on defense all year. They play great in conference basketball in the Pac-12. I think they're the most complete team on the board, honestly. I have Houston lining up with them in the Sweet 16, but I don't think it'll be much of a contest. At the bottom of the bracket, I actually have in the Sweet 16, I have Tennessee versus Villanova. I'm really hot on Tennessee. I've been following them all year. I think they got snubbed being a 3 seed. I thought they could have been a 2 seed easily, but I think they're going to come out hot. They're going to be passionate. So I see them. I see them playing a pretty solid tournament run until they hit Arizona, but I don't think it's going to be close. I think Arizona is clearly far and away the best team in the country.
All right. Some of the other upsets I have also included here. I actually say Loyola knocks out the Buckeyes. I really have a good feeling there. I also think Nova can make a deep run, and I mean they looked really incredible in the Big East, but I do think Arizona would be the ones to knock them out in the lead 8. For a solid, just random bust, I picked UAB to get over Houston, even though people this is solely on judgment. But UAB did win the CUSA conference. I know people are a big fan of Jordan Walker. People think he might be somebody who can make the NBA. Stellar offense that knows how to create turnovers on the defensive side. And I just solely doing this on pure what's the word I'm looking for? Impulse. And we'll see if that actually pans out. Do you have any other upsets from this side of the bracket, Brandon?
A key match that I was looking at that I ended up taking Seton Hall was, I think the Seton Hall TCU match is probably one of the most equal matchups. They both have decent offense. They're okay on defense. I think it's really going to come down to, their shooters. Is Seton Hall shooters going to be on that day? I was watching, I think, one of the other broadcasts, they were talking about March Madness, and the one key point they were talking about was it's going to be a match to see who can hit like 50 points first, because both of these teams are like middle of the pack teams in their conference. They are definitely a team that can make an upset if they play really well. I just think that Seton Hall has it over TCU just a little bit. But we'll see. I could be definitely completely wrong about that. And I also feel Houston was kind of how Alex felt. Tennessee should have got a lower seed. I felt like Houston was slightly disrespected. I think Houston comes into every tournament coming out as being one of the top teams in their conference. I know it's not one of the best conferences. We're talking about being the AAC, where the UConn had recently just came from. They're not known to be some of these stronger teams in their conference, but I think Houston just continues every year to, come into this tournament and make somewhat of an appearance. And I think Houston have a great chance of making it to the Sweet 16 and actually getting knocked out by Arizona. I just don't think Houston has that much firepower. And I also agree, I think Loyola is going to make it to the top 32, but I just think that Villanova has that clutch factor that we all know. And at the end of the game, they have one of the best guards in the country, in my opinion, that just can do anything on the floor. Whether you need him to be an assist king or you need him to get points for you, he can do it. So
Yeah, Colin Gillespie was a beast in
Colin.
the tournament.
And he has the composure for the tournament.
Yeah.
He's already seen the tournament before. He knows what to expect, and I think he's just a great leader for that roster.
I think he's got that clutch gene because he looks like Tim Tebow's son.
Let's see if that faith leads them to anything good. So the final region, the Midwest one, with schools like Kansas and Creighton, the very hot Iowa team in Providence, LSU, Wisconsin, DU, Auburn. This is kind of, for me personally, the most difficult one to decide and pan out. And it's probably going to be my most risky pick because so many people either love this school or they think they're a big phony. And for me, I think Auburn, even though they lost in the first round of the SEC tournament, I think if things go in the right direction, this is a very fast and dynamic team. Huge on defense, especially creating turnovers. Jabari Smith could be a top 5 pick of the draft in a couple months. And even though they are young and lack a lot of experience, when things do work out, that team is very hard to keep up with. And that's probably going to be my most risky pick. And probably another team of people like, and getting a 5th seed is definitely undermining them, is Iowa, who was stellar in their conference tournament. They're one of the top 5 offenses in the entire league. So many scorers in particular as well. And even with plenty of shooters, and Keegan Murray is their big player as well, I think Iowa can make a deep run, but I expect Auburn's Tigers to make the upset there. Well, it's not an upset, but I do think that they can pull it off. I really see that. And one other big upset I have here, I think South Dakota State can knock out Providence. One, because one of my favorites, Mike Francesa, gives them a lot of praise, and almost the opposite of what he says usually happens. And that's where I see this is going, simply because Big Mike decided that he's going to curse him. I'm simply going on that. And if anything, from the little research I have for South Dakota State, I mean, they also had a big win streak at Division I in their conference. People like the 2 guards in Sherman and Easley. Apparently, they are undefeated at halftime. And, why not keep the streak going? And they're 30-4. So this is clearly a good team coming out of the Summit League. But that's all I see them going, because then they would play Iowa, and I think Iowa would knock them out. But I think it'd be a close game. So I'll start with Ranniello on this one. The Midwest Conference. What do you see?
Oh man, this division's fucked up. I got 3 upsets in this part of the bracket. I got Creighton upsetting San Diego State. I don't know if that's necessarily an upset with an 8-9, but I got Iowa State upsetting LSU, and I got upsetting USC. I know that's very unpopular, but no, I mean, I had, by the Elite 8, I'm all in on the hype on Iowa. I got them facing off against Wisconsin. I've been a huge fan of Wisconsin all year. I think they're battle tested, and I'm not just saying that to troll Juwan Howard, but I just think that they got a lot of good things going. They got the right recipe to win. They've had a lot of tournament success in the past, even with Bo Ryan. Iowa has the bodies. They got all the athleticism. I like the momentum that they're bringing into the tournament, especially after their success in their conference tournament. But I think ultimately Wisconsin's going to prevail and face off against Arizona. I have Iowa and Providence. That was kind of a toss-up for me because I think I don't buy the San Diego State theory. I think that Providence is going to roll them. And I think that Iowa-Providence will probably be the best game in the second round in this part of the division. And then Miami-Auburn is going to be tough. I got Auburn slightly edging out Miami, and I have them playing Wisconsin in the Sweet 16. I think that's going to be probably the absolute best Sweet 16 matchup out of the entire bracket, honestly. I think it's the most compelling matchup. So I'm excited to see this part of the bracket. I think this is probably the most unknown part of the bracket. And Wisconsin looks just completely formidable for me, though.
Sweet. I like what I'm hearing. Brandon, I'm sure I like what I hear from you on this side of the bracket as well. How do you feel about the Midwest region?
So there was a lot of upsets in this region, but I am agreeing with you on the Auburn team. I think Bruce Pearl, their head coach, is a great coach. I watched an interview with him last night. He was talking about, looking into the tournament. And I think that he's a great coach. He has a great staff, great roster to coach. I think they're going to come out and definitely make a run all the way to the Final Four. I think they're a young team. And, the one thing he preaches is that defense travels, and that, offense can be there when it needs to be. But as long as you have a great defense, you can definitely win games. And I agree with him on that. I think defense can win, is the key factor to win a lot of these games in the tournament and shut down a lot of these high scoring teams. Another upset I had was, key match I have is Creighton. I definitely think Creighton will make it to the top 32. Young team. They played absolutely phenomenal in the Big East tournament, upsetting the number 1 seed Providence and actually blowing them out. But then ended up losing against, Villanova. So I definitely think that young team with a lot of young talent will make it to that top 32. But I just think Kansas is just stacked with a bunch of older players, seniors that will just that have that experience and will, in the end, beat that younger squad. I also was impressed with Iowa. I think that Iowa makes it to the Elite Eight and ends up losing to Auburn. I think Iowa has great young guards. I think that they can make a run with no problem, and I could be wrong about the Auburn game. Iowa has been showing nothing but great skill, and in the past tournament, they played very well. I don't watch that team very often, but from what I saw and researched, they have looked really great. I think the one team that is being looked to as being too good is definitely Providence in my eyes. I think Providence had a lucky year. I don't think that Providence will be able to repeat this in the following year in the Big East. I think that they had a great starting off of the year in conference play, and they played a lot of the top teams when we were going through injuries. UConn, early in the year, we had Tanogo on the bench. We had RJ on the bench at one point. So we were pretty much playing a lot of our secondary players, and they won a lot of, a couple games off of us because of that. And same thing goes for Villanova and I think Creighton. I definitely think we have to watch out for the Wisconsin. I think they're kind of like a stealthy, like hidden in there, like that C3. I think they can make a run. I think it really comes off of, how they do against LSU, and then play against Auburn. But just Auburn looks super strong, and I think they're going to take Midwest with no problem.
Huge thumbs up there. So that will complete our region. So if you guys can remind me, Brandon, your Final Four is?
Gonzaga in the West, Kentucky in the East, Arizona in the South, and Auburn in the Midwest.
Okay. Yes, I did pretty much the same thing. Gonzaga and Kentucky for the West and East, Arizona and Auburn representing the South and Midwest. Those are my Final Four. And Alex, can you remind us one more time your Final Four again?
Man, that looks way different than you guys. I got Duke out of the West and Baylor in the East. I got Arizona in the South and Wisconsin in the Midwest.
Okay. So we'll start with the ones who have the same idea with me and Brandon. So Brandon, for me, I decided that Gonzaga will defeat Kentucky in the Final Four on account of their incredible shooting, rebounding, and defending. And their defense, I think, could be good enough to stop a Kentucky team that really does impress me. And then I have Arizona taking over for Auburn, again, with a young and big team, huge on the boards, especially, I do think for two teams that people say they both lack experience, I think the Arizona team can look a little more mature, especially in a game that is more size than the Auburn team. I think that's really essential in the college game, especially. Not everybody is Seth Curry yet at that era. So I think an aggressive team that goes off the board and drives the basket is going to have Arizona lead the it's going to have Arizona play in the championship. Are we on the same page or are we different?
So I have everything right except for the Gonzaga and Kentucky. I feel Kentucky are going to really impress out of the East. I think they're going to be able to beat Gonzaga. Mm-hmm. I think it'll be a close game. I just think those young guards are just going to take over. And I think, Kentucky in that clutch factor is just going to come through and beat them.
Okay, so your final will be Kentucky versus Arizona. Who Correct. Do you think is going to be the championship in that matchup?
Arizona. I think Arizona's Arizona. I think they can, they played outstanding basketball this year, and I think they deserve and prove to be one of the best teams in the country. And I think Arizona has it. I think Arizona's too complete as a team and as a roster to be able to, for any team to really come close to them.
Really? And what do you think could be a big weakness of Kentucky in that matchup in particular? What do you think they would lack against that big, powerful Wildcat team?
I think we in Kentucky, we got to look at the guards. We got to think, are they going to play consistent? There's one guard in specific. I forget his name. I got it right here.
You good?
Was it Kellen Grady? I think he has to play big this tournament. He's that third guard kind of player that needs to put double digits for them. I think they can't rely on Oscar. They're their down low center forward player. We don't want him to have all that weight on him. I think Ty Washington will have a great standard game. He's played well all season. I just don't think it's enough scoring power to be able to take on the Arizona team.
All right. I like that insight. As we do have the same Final Four, I actually think Gonzaga would take the game over Kentucky. And again, I think Arizona would beat Auburn, as mentioned. And I think Gonzaga, this will finally be the team that gets over the hump. They were also close last year, and this team stayed relatively the same from a year ago. I just think a more experienced team that is very dynamic in all aspects of the game of basketball will finally bring good news to the world of Gonzaga fans. So, Alex, for somebody who looks at things differently than us in this case, which I do encourage.
Always the case.
Who's going where? So your first matchup, you had Baylor and remind me one more time, Baylor and Duke. Who's going to win in that game?
I got this coming down to the wire. I think this is going to be a really tight one. I got Baylor winning out right at the end. I think I have more faith in this team than the general populace because it's mostly the same roster from the championship team, but I think that they've been battle tested throughout the year, playing in a tough conference, overcoming, the odds against Kansas in the regular season, having their battles with Texas. I think they've seen more formidable opponents that I think they'll be ready. They'll be able to stay the course throughout the first four rounds of the tournament leading up to the Final Four. And I'm kind of banking on that. It's a little more belief and faith and pride than anything else. But I'm going to go down with my pick and just take Baylor out of that sake. And and I think Duke's going to put up a good fight. I just think that they're going to go out as hard as they possibly can for Coach K, but I got Baylor prevailing.
All right. And on the other side, you have Wisconsin and was it Arizona too? I'm sorry. Say that one more time. So I was right down. So yes. For Arizona and Wisconsin, you were saying?
Yeah, I definitely got Arizona. I completely concur everything you guys said about their team and their makeup. Wisconsin, for me, it was tough because I think them and Iowa is one of the biggest contests in the Elite Eight. I think that's going to be like a really, really star-studded matchup. I really like everything about Iowa, so that was really hard to choose. That was really hard pick for me. But there's something about Wisconsin just having magic in the tournament. I think that their backcourt, who's their star they have? He's fantastic. I'm trying to think. He's like 6'8".
For Arizona?
No, for Wisconsin. I'm blanking on his name. It's a really simple name too. But he's been a
star. You talking to Johnny Davis?
Johnny Davis, yeah.
He's a guard.
Yeah. I watched the game against Indiana, the game against Michigan. Every time I'm on my TV screen, he's been lights out. He's been stellar. He's been able to steady the ship for them. So I have a lot of faith in Wisconsin prevailing over Iowa. And I just think they're going to be, having said all that, I still think they're going to be outmatched with Arizona. I think they're the best team in the country. So if you're putting Baylor and Arizona in the championship, I'm taking Arizona to win it all.
Arizona winning it all. And why do you think that team would knock out the Baylor Bears?
I just think they're going to limit mistakes and capitalize on turnovers. I think that they're a little more imposing inside. I think losing the starting center for Baylor is going to hurt them in this situation more than previous rounds. Duke's not as big, and Texas is not as big inside in the Eastern bracket. So I think that'll kind of come to bite them in the ass in the championship. But I just love everything about Arizona. I just think they're the better team.
All right. Love and respected. Well, gentlemen, this really was awesome. We have our picks. So again, as I jotted down, I'm picking Gonzaga Bulldogs to win the championship. Brandon's picking Arizona, and Alex is picking Arizona as well. Only thing that is different is that Arizona will play Auburn for Brandon's side, and then Alex has Arizona playing
Wisconsin.
Playing Wisconsin, excuse me.
There you go.
So great. It's great stuff. I'm really excited. Everybody did an incredible job. Brandon, you did fantastic. I'm excited to continue to do these with you. And Alex, as always, is a big part of the show. And yeah, it's March Madness, boys. Even if
it's a great time.
Even if the first 2 weeks are more exciting to the country than the last 2 weeks, it's still awesome for anyone who likes great basketball. So it's going to be a great time, guys. So again, Brandon Gutierrez, Alex Ranniello, thank you, gentlemen, for this. We will meet up in about a week and a half to see how accurate our Sweet 16s are, and then we'll go from there. So thank you so much, gentlemen.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Talk soon.
Anytime. See you later.
See you soon.